Well, who the hell do you think you are? The Spiritual Shitshow podcast with Suzanne Soul, episode number 4. Hey, you fresh and tasty mofos. Welcome to the Spiritual Shitshow podcast, where we get into the utter shitshow the healing and spiritual awakening journey can be. I'm your host, Suzanne Soul, comedian, lifelong spiritual student, and I'm sharing some of the amazeballs shiz I've learned along my journey that has helped me and that I hope helps you too. Okay, so first and foremost, let's start with a very important question. Who the fuck are you? Are you the person, aka your face, your name, your body, the shit you like, the shit you don't like, your financial status, your lactose tolerance or intolerance, how good or bad of a dancer you are? Are you the experience that you have of yourself? Or what? BT dubs, the definition of the word person is defined in the dictionary as a human being regarded as an individual. Except, of course, if you're conjoined, then it's more complicated. Speaking of being conjoined, most spiritual teachings talk about how there are two aspects of our beings, like used to over by there. One aspect of our being is the I that we experience as our personal individual self. This part of us is also referred to as the ego. Ego, where I go. For the definition of the term ego, I went to our neighbors across the pond and referred to the Cambridge Dictionary. In Cambridge, I found the definition of ego to be quite fascinating. Quite. In general, the ego is defined as your idea or opinion of yourself, especially your feeling of your own importance and ability. Well, isn't that special? So what I'm hearing you say, Cambridge Dicsh, is that my personal identity is not a neutral thing, but it's what I think about myself, how I see my worth, and what I think I'm capable of at any given time. Well, slap my bottom and call me Shirley, because that changes all the time. I mean, our moods can change with the tide. Our friends and family's moods can change with the tide. Basically, everybody's moods can change with the tide. And our perception of ourselves, which has derived from our childhood experiences and the meanings we made about ourselves from those experiences, positive and negative, get validated one way or the other by the current events in our lives. And the current events in our lives change with the fucking tide, too. I mean, in just 1 week, we can experience a myriad of ups and downs, wins and losses, good times, bad times. I know I've had my share. And when our perception of an opinion of ourselves changes with every single thing that occurs, it can look something like this. On Monday, I'm smart. On Tuesday, I'm dumb. On Wednesday, I'm terrible. On Thursday, in the morning, I'm gorgeous. And in the afternoon, I'm fat and ugly. On Friday, I look tired, but I'm a nice person. On Saturday, no one has ever met anyone like me, but I'm kind of weird. And on Sunday, I rest. Because I deserve it, but also because I'm lazy. And now you might be saying, come on, give me a break. I need some consistency. Well, you ain't gonna get it when you're riding the ego train, girl. All aboard the ego train to Fluctuation City, the city where everything fluctuates and nothing doesn't fluctuate. Change is coming, change is coming, change is coming, change is coming. I mean, no wonder none of us can settle on a career or a mate. Okay, so let me get this straight. Looking at myself from the ego perspective, how I feel about myself and how I identify myself to myself is based on how current events and the feedback I receive from others reflect the unconscious beliefs I have about myself, positive and negative, majority of which were created when I was anywhere from 2 to 6 years old. That seems like a great plan. JK, I mean, have you seen toddlers? They literally go through the 6 stages of grief on a 45-minute cycle. So, where the fuck does the ego come from? Great question. Okay, so when we're born into this world, our ego structure starts being built. Most importantly, for the purpose of getting what American psychologist Abraham Maslow called our human hierarchy of needs met. Starting with the most important first 3 needs, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. JK, for reals, they are physiological needs like food, water, and shelter, the need for safety, and the need for love and belonging. And as we develop, we may learn certain ways of reacting to the world around us in order to try to get those needs met. It may be very hard when you're a little baby munchkin to figure out all the formulas of who we need to be or how we need to be to try to have as good a life as we can, while we're also trying to figure out who we want to be for ourselves. Now, you might be thinking, so basically, what it sounds like you're saying, Suzanne, is that when we're kids, we just throw a bunch of shit against the wall and see what sticks. And of course, I have seen some kids actually do that, and it was traumatizing. Anyway, the answer to your question is yeah, that's about it. And I know that doesn't sound like the road to creating a consistent and sure sense of self. Well, actually, it sounds more like being on one of those carnival rides. That's a giant disc with walls all around it, and everyone grabs a piece of the wall, and then the disc starts spinning and shaking you all around, and all of the people on the ride get tossed about, and they can't get back to their original spot on the wall, and not even their spouses can save them. They just have to watch them be tossed around like a piece of chicken in a shake and bake bag. But seriously, folks, I am being soups dramatic, and it may not be this dramatic for you, but it may be for some, and if so, holla. But basically, what I'm trying to say is this ego shit can be soups inconsistent. And when it gets really difficult is when we feel triggered or vulnerable. Then the whole thing can really go to shit. Like, for me, whenever I put myself in a vulnerable position by putting myself out there, like doing this podcast, or by being authentic in relationships and expressing my needs, it can feel really scary. And I tend to very anxiously look externally for my perception of myself and my barometer of how I'm doing via other people's reactions to me and how they treat me. And since other people are also having their own moods and their own insecurities in external situations that are constantly changing, external sources are not always the most reliable source for our self-perception. Now, am I saying don't take honest and well-meaning feedback from others? No, of course not. But it's also important to be discerning of whose feedback you're considering in your self-perception and not exclude your own inner wisdom. Okay, so from what we've just discussed thus far, it seems that left unchecked, our egos can really come up with some very unreliable equations about who we are and what is true. Hey girl, it's your ego. So I was assessing your life, and when I do the math, on a scale from 1 to 10, I'd say you're fucked. Listen, I know I'm a silly-ass motherfucker, but for real, I think when we talk about this stuff, it takes some of the pressure off of us. Because it is so easy to get caught up in the idea that if we're not perfect, we're failing. And that we should have it all figured out, have all the answers, live life with 100% success, always be happy, always have everything under control. And from what we've just discussed, it's impossible to control everything in your life. It's impossible to always get it right. Listen, queens. For all the ages, the great thinkers and stinkers of our time have been trying to answer the question, who are we? Thinkers and stinkers like the Buddha, who said, from the Buddhist perspective, the idea of individual self is an illusion. It is not possible to separate self from its surroundings. Okay, Mr. Buddha, so what you're telling me is that my ego identity is not only based on how I'm feeling about myself on any given day, but that it's also completely tied to my surroundings? Oh, jeez. Well, then let's go somewhere else, because I think I just saw a roach. Check, please. Okay, so I think the overall theme of what I've learned about ego is that it's kind of codependent on the external world and on our moods. But listen, don't get your panties in too much of a bunch, because there is actually incredible beauty in this shit show. And the beauty is that in our sublimely imperfect, vulnerable, and flawed humanity, in our experience of the drama, the ups and downs, the pains and pleasures, all of our experiences and challenges help us to understand each other, teach us compassion, expand our hearts and minds, so we can forgive ourselves and each other, and so much more. And that's life. That's what the people say. I don't know why this episode is a musical, but it is. Any hoodles, what I'm saying is that there's an upside to it all. And yes, Queen, that is kind of a really cool upside. Happy face emoji with hearts. Also, I'm not trying to dog the ego or the thinking mind or our personalities or individual character and all that, because I love drama. And our personalities and all that human delightfulness are totally awesome. All I'm saying is that it helps to have access to an axis in all our human chaos, and that the ever-changing and externally driven ego can be tempered by the inner presence of who we are. Eckhart Tolle said, "Presence is the arising of a dimension of consciousness from where you can become aware that there's a voice in the head. That awareness is beyond thinking. It's a space of consciousness where you can be the observer of your own mind, the awareness behind the thought processes." For human beings to discover this dimension is extraordinarily important. It is, in fact, as I see it, the next step in the evolution of humanity. Well, right on, Eckhart, because you know that famous Buddhist saying, "The mind makes an excellent servant, but a terrible master." And that's our cue. Drum roll, please. And now I present this year's hottest new musical. Let's talk about the spiritual aspect of our being. Let's get spiritual, spiritual. I wanna get spiritual. Pierre Delrade Desjardins. I'm sure I said that wrong, and I'm very sorry to all the Frenchies. French philosopher, paleontologist, and Jesuit priest from the early 1900s said, "We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience." Well, what the heck does that mean? Well, hold on to your drawers, because I'm fixing to tell you. I have thoughts, but I am not my thoughts. I have feelings, but I am not my feelings. I have desires, but I am not desires. I have wishes, but I am not those wishes. I have intense pleasure and excruciating pain, but I am neither of those. I have a body, but I am not my body. I have a mind, but I am not my mind. All those can be seen, but I am the seer. All those can be known, but I am the knower. All those are merely objects, but I am a real subject or true self, not any passing parts and pieces and objects and things. I am not thoughts, not feelings, not desires, not body, not mind, not this, not that. This quote by mystic and spiritual teacher Carolyn Myss is saying that who we truly are is the pure consciousness that observes and experiences all of it. The joy, the pain, the triumphs and failures. Who we are is the one observing it all as pure presence, as spiritual beings having a human experience. Well, what the fuck does that mean? I know. Let's ask a scientist. Dr. William Tiller, who was an author and a professor of materials science and engineering at Stanford University, said, "In my modeling, the observer is the spirit inside the 4-layer bio-body suit. And so it is like the ghost in the machine. It is the consciousness that's driving the vehicle, and it is observing the surround." It is so easy to get caught in the belief that who we are is our moods and personalities and what happens to us. But how can we be any of that when those things are always changing? The experiences we have in life are always changing, always in action, and our moods change on the daily. My personality has changed from one decade to the next. Who I was in my 20s was different than who I was in my 30s, and then in my 40s, and so on, and so on. And they told two friends, and they told two friends. The thing is, everything in our world is always changing, even our bodies. Want your mind blown? In the Scientific American, there was this article that said that scientists had finally determined the speed of cell turnover and found that 330 billion of our cells are replaced daily, the equivalent to about 1% of all our cells. So, in 80 to 100 days, 30 trillion cells will have been replenished, the equivalent of a new you. So, don't get too attached to that earlobe or that armpit, because in 6 months, it will have been replaced with an exact replica of itself. And you'll be like, I can't believe it's not butter. And when we die, our bodies can still be here in the physical world, but we are not. And we may not know for sure where we go, but we do know that when someone dies, the life source that makes them who they are is no longer there. I think it's what they meant when they said, Elvis has left the building. Ram Dass said, who you think you are is not who you really are at all. We've been told by spiritual teachers throughout history that many of us don't fully comprehend the power of life that exists within and as all of us. Marianne Williamson wrote in A Return to Love, fabulous book, highly recommended, 10 out of 10, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. Y'all, she is not playing. And in the Bible, Matthew recounts the words of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount in chapter 5, verses 14 through 16, which says, you are the light of the world. No one lights a lamp and puts it under a bowl, and no one puts baby in the corner. Instead, he puts it on the lampstand, where it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, your light must shine before people, so they will see the good things you do and praise your Father in heaven. Jesus was like, y'all, you are the expressions of the divine. You are the light and the love of God right here on the planet. Who you are is sacred. So start acting like it. Now, I know you might be like, okay, so where do we get all this sacredness and power from? Well, let me tell you, from being part of the whole kit and caboodle. Oh yeah, all of it, boo. The majestic power you feel when you look at a mountain or the ocean or the sky is in you too. Hey! I love the analogy that's attributed to ancient Stoic philosopher Seneca. We are the waves of the same sea, leaves of the same tree, flowers of the same garden. And Einstein said, a human being is a part of the whole, called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feeling, as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. You think you could get that done by 5 o'clock? Like Bob Marley said, one love, one heart, let's get together and feel alright. This realization that who we are is more than what we can see or fully understand frees us from looking only to the ever-changing ego for our ultimate sense of self. It frees us from the frustrating thought that we are somehow inadequate, or that there's always something missing, or never quite right, because it suggests that we are made of the same stuff as the incredible and powerful universal spirit. So, how do we realize it? By coming into the present moment, by allowing our awareness to be right the fuck where we are. When I do that, I can actually feel the power and presence of my own life force. And it's freaking groovy. We can practice this daily in our lives. And dude, I am not fucking around when I tell you that when you take a breath and bring your presence to that breath, you can feel the sacredness of your being and the power of your life right there. And within that feeling is the knowledge that there's more to you. and that you arrived on the scene from another plane of existence, the God place. Whoa. The idea is that the perspective of the ego is focused on the past and the future. I wanted or didn't want this to happen. I want or don't want this to happen. So the practice is to invite moments of presence into our daily life so that we don't spend our entire day dragged along by the ever-changing stream of thoughts of the mind. But here's the thing. The ego and the spiritual essence of who we are not separate, y'all. The ego is a manifestation of consciousness as a ripple on the surface of the ocean is a manifestation of the ocean. It's only when the ripple is unaware that it is also the ocean that the illusion of separateness is felt. Get it? Got it? Also, awareness of yourself as a spiritual being helps you to have compassion for yourself and others, and to tap into the creative intelligence and pure potentiality of the source of life. Delish. Sometimes we can get into the headspace like, my ego is bad. I have to eliminate it or reject it or control it so that I'm always on the perfect and spiritual side of myself. But darling, that is folly. Remember, ego, where I go. Here's the deal. When we allow our presence to be present with our humanity, aka the temporal aspect of our being, or our ego self, as a reassuring and loving presence, we can truly learn grace, compassion, forgiveness, and we can experience healing and spiritual growth. And that is the spiritual journey. And that, too. Like my Grandma Rose always used to say, can't we all just get along and love one another? And Grandma Rose was right, because unless we are completely realized spiritual beings on the planet, and some people are, but most of us are regular, and us regular people are going to have ego stuff, fun and not fun, to work with for most or all of our lives. I'm not psychic, so I have to give options. Anyways, when we can consistently practice putting our attention on and allowing our own deep, loving, powerful inner presence, the spiritual essence of our being, into our present moment, to breathe life into, love, and be the compassionate and healing source that it is to our ego structure. That is the ultimate love fest. And maybe why we're here. All right, motherfuckers, this has been the Spiritual Shit Show podcast. And as always, you know I love you so fucking much. And I'll see you on the next one. Roll it, darling. You can just be a love and roll it.